These are all USM BSW students. They have a group, yeah.
I just wanted to start out, we are going to talk about a trip that we all three made back in March to the UConn School of Social Work Campaign School. I want to start by saying that I never expected to end up as an aspiring politician. Going into the social work program, I knew that my goal was to stay in the state of Mississippi. I made that decision really early on. I looked at the state and I just felt like the biggest problem that we have when it comes to many things is that the people that care a lot about the state of Mississippi leave Mississippi. And so going into this program, I openly said very adamantly that I would never leave the state of Mississippi, that I had planned on my entire career would be here. As I was furthering my education and doing my research and becoming politically involved, I realized that being a social worker in Mississippi isn't always easy. And so I was getting frustrated. I was getting frustrated with the policies being made and the people in charge and the things that were happening. And I realized that the only real way that I could do the things that I wanted to do as a social worker and as a person was to run for office. And that wasn't an easy decision. A lot of people in my life were like, oh, you're crazy, like you're never gonna, that's a really big dream. I was always interested in politics. My mom and my dad always said, like, that's something you don't talk about with people. And I didn't like that. I've always been known in my cohort as the person that's going to argue with people about politics, and I'm going to inform people every chance I can about what I think is valuable to the state of Mississippi. And so last year when Tanya came and spoke to the School of Social Work, thank you, Dr. Rayner, I just really I was like, yes, like this is everything that I believe in. Like I loved everything she said. And so when we found out that they were holding the conference in Connecticut, Miranda was really the one that was like, I'm going. And I was like, I'll look into it. That's a really big move, and things just really fell together. So those of you that don't know what the Humphreys Institute is, Nancy A. Humphreys started a campaign school. She was a political social worker, and so she started a campaign school at UConn, which is the University of Connecticut, and it is for social workers that want to run for office. And so going there, it really it just felt like home. Like we were there for 2 full days, and it was really intense training on how to run a campaign, the qualifications, why it's important for us to do so, especially in the political climate that we are in right now. And I just really fell in love with the whole process. And I feel like as a social worker, it's my responsibility to make these decisions and put forth that effort. And I realized at Connecticut, not only am I qualified to run for office, but I'm overqualified to run for office, and this is what I'm meant to do, and it's what I plan on doing. And so I'm going to pass the baton to Miranda so she can explain more in depth about that. But thank you.
So when Chelsea said that we are overqualified, as social workers, we are overqualified. Who better can serve the people? Who better can hear the problems and find solutions than social workers? And that was a lot of what we learned in Connecticut. But I want to tell just a little bit of story for y'all, just so that there's still some people in here who I know are saying, oh no, I don't like what's going on, but I don't want to be in politics either. Politics is too cutthroat. I'm more about advocacy. So we all know who Dr. Martin Luther King is. We all know his story. We all know his legacy that he has left on this country. We know that had it not been for Dr. Martin Luther King, we wouldn't have had the civil rights movement. He's one of the icons of that movement. So I always think about, even though Dr. Martin Luther King was the icon of the movement, had he not been able to catch the attention and the ear of John F. Kennedy or Lyndon B. Johnson, both presidents, what would have happened? would the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s ever translate to the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Would it have ever made it where legally segregation was ended? In addition to banning employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, which some more have been added since then, but that was the original act of 1964. So, bringing it back to social workers, whenever I look around this room, I see so many amazing people who want to do so much and see that there are things that need to be changed in Mississippi. I see people in this room who are willing to stand up and march. I see people who are willing to take a knee for injustice. I see people in this room who are ready to make it their voice heard whenever something has gone wrong in our society. We're willing to advocate for our clients, but are we willing to make those changes legally? Make it where legally it's not able, discrimination isn't an option. So, like Chelsea was saying, the Humphreys Institute and the campaign school at UConn is specific to social workers. But that's not the only or irregular program. If you go to our overseeing body, the National Association of Social Workers website, you will see that they have a list of over 150 social workers who currently hold public office. And that's just social workers who hold public office, not those who have worked on campaigns or have worked hand in hand with legislators or anything of that nature. It's just social workers who serve as elected officials. Most specifically, from the last election, last Tuesday, we have seen so many things transpire. One of the most watched cases for me was of Kristen Sinema. She was running for the senatorial seat in Arizona, and so many people were wondering why I was watching that, because I have absolutely no ties to Arizona. But Kristen Sinema is a social worker, and it was personal to me because if she can do it, I feel like we can do it. But in addition to the NASW having a list of social workers, they also have a PAC, which is a political action committee that is willing to give funding on behalf of social workers who want to run for office. So if you aren't getting the picture yet, clearly social workers are meant to run for office and hold those seats. So with my personal experience, as Mr. Haywood said, I have been working since June with Representative Jeremy Anderson. He currently ran, or just finished running, against the incumbent Congressman Stephen Palazzo for Congress in the 4th Congressional District. And unfortunately, we did not win that race, but so much ground was gained during that race. We saw people mobilized who had never, ever voted, people who had never become involved in a campaign. I knocked doors with people who had never spoke to people in their neighborhood. And I feel like that energy is something much bigger than just a win, because it makes me feel like there will be a future for Mississippi, especially South Mississippi, that's been predominantly Republican. Where I'm from is the 2nd Congressional District, so that's Benny Thompson's district. And it's kind of a transition here, but to see people willing to get out and to work to try to make a change and to elect not just a Democrat or Republican, I'm not taking it there, but what I am saying is Representative Jeremy Anderson is 26 years old. He's an African-American male. He's young. He's been in the state legislature for 5 years. He was the youngest ever African-American elected to a state legislature. So whenever I looked at his campaign and as I worked on his campaign, I saw progress, I saw future, I saw hope, and I saw Mississippi moving onward. And even if we didn't win, I still see that. And there's still so many opportunities to get involved. And Brian's going to tell you a little bit more about how you can do that. And I do encourage you to do that. Join me. This is our Mississippi. and we need to move forward.
Good afternoon. I'm going to move this down a little bit. I'm short of vertical challenge. I'm going to speak to you right now about how students can get involved in politics. Right now, we just had some huge races that she brought up, and she herself worked on campaigns. There is not an age limit in which you can work on campaigns. I've seen mothers take their children out there and knock on doors. I've seen fathers with their sons and daughters passing out pamphlets. I think the simplest thing you can do as a student would be, and if you want to, would be ask somebody and they'll lead you in the right direction. Dr. Rayner is definitely one of those people. I'm sorry I had to throw you on it. He's definitely one of those people you can ask for assistance if you want to help anybody's campaign. He should be able to give you the information. I meant to start my speech out with, I went and interviewed another social worker. She was my mentor this past week. And I asked her why social work and why does she want to be a social worker. And she looks at me and she smiles and she says, first they came for socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for trade unionist, but I did not speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Next they came for Jews. I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. That was written by Martin Niemöller. He was a pastor during the German occupation by the Nazis. I think that in itself is just telling you that, as I'm touching base with what both of these individuals have spoken on, we have a responsibility to speak out against injustice and oppression. And by involving ourselves in things such as working on people's campaigns, attending city council meetings, going to the board of supervisors and listening to what they have to say, we have the ability to make sure that not only are we taken care of as an individual, but it will be passed down not only on the micro level, but you end up helping individuals on the meso level, and then it will graduate into the macro level. So even doing something so small as voting is doing a large part. We have, speaking of voting, on November 27th, we have a huge vote coming up. I don't care what you're doing that day. I don't care who offers you front row seats to a public hanging. I ask that you show up. I mean, just being real. Just put it out there. Yeah, I said that. In 2019, there's going to be a governor's race and a lieutenant governor's race, November 5th. I implore you, you're wondering why do I know these dates like in this years ahead? It's because it's that important. It's something that you need to keep in mind. We have the ability to change, like she said, Mississippi. You can join organizations on campus. There's nonpartisan organizations. There's the USM Republicans. There's USM Democrats. You can also join organizations off campus, such as Forward 365 Mississippi. It is an organization, it's a nonpartisan organization in Hattiesburg whose focus is holding the government accountable and promoting public policies that advance the well-being of every Mississippian, not just the upper 1% and not just the poor. We're trying to make sure that everybody's taken care of. Immerse yourself in the news. I talk to my cohort about this all the time, and I know the news is boring unless you're watching the East Side News. Unless you're watching something with Kardashians on it. I know, which I don't ever do. I know the news can be boring, and I know it can go over your head sometimes when they start talking about politics and policies and what's going on. But it's kind of like eating something new. You know, when you first eat it the first time, you can't stand it. You eat it again, you still can't stand it, but it's not that bad. And if you keep eating it, eventually it's something that you'll adjust to. Watch news is pretty much like that. Immerse yourself in news, learn what both, and don't just watch one side, watch both sides. Learn what the fake news says, learn what the really fake news says, and then meet in the middle. And I learned this recently. I was reading an article and it was talking about fact check everything. Don't read something and go spit out to your friends, because sometimes it can make you look really, really ignorant. and I have family members, so I tell that too all the time, Facebook is the devil. Fact check everything. I was gonna say one more point. Remember that even if you aren't interested in politics, since you are social work students, or many of you are social work students, and many of us are social workers in the room, even if you aren't interested in politics, policies still affect you, and they're gonna affect your clients. So in order to be a competent social worker, you have to be somewhat politically involved. I want to take this moment to thank each of you all for listening to us, and I hope I haven't taken up too much time. And again, thank you, and I hope you learned a little bit from what we had.